Good morning and welcome to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast. I'm your host, Casey Dubrovic. In today's episode, we're going to discuss our new program, only $595 for those who qualify for our oral at-home ketamine treatments.
Good morning. I wanted to take a minute and talk to you about a super exciting new treatment option available through Revitalize Ketamine Clinics. So, a lot of people are interested in what we're doing and they can't afford it, or they don't have access to it, or logistically it's too challenging. And so, we're trying to increase access. We know that there are some big players in the game already, including like mindbloom and betterU and joyous, kind of nationwide, who are making this accessible to more people, which I think is great. That being said, I think without having a local space to be able to kind of go in and meet your practitioner, for one, I don't think that's very safe. And for two, I think it's super important to get the best and most out of your treatments, to have a local treatment center and a local practitioner who you can meet in person at least quarterly. I want to meet people much more than that. Integration is really where the rubber hits the road with all of these ego dissolution agents who will be coming to the forefront. Currently, the only like widely legal ones are ketamine, legal in all 50 states, and we're using it off label the way we're doing it. That being said, there's a ketamine derivative that a lot of people are aware of called S-ketamine or Spravato that is covered through a lot of insurances. We also offer that there through copays and that sort of thing. Oftentimes people end up paying more than they would through this new treatment option. And it's worth offering and considering. So I priced them all out. I looked at betterU, I looked at mindbloom, I looked at joyous, and I looked at a few other ones. But those are the ones that I thought were worth kind of considering and talking about, because they're kind of the ones that people are the most aware of. So I have a comparison sheet that I'll post so you can kind of look at that. I think what we're offering is an extremely affordable price point for most people, and it really has capacity to change people's lives for the better, especially when used with that right setting and sustainability. And so I'm always going to be the most passionate about, and this evidence supports this is the most effective, is in-office intravenous treatments for a myriad of reasons. That being said, there's a lot of people doing at-home ketamine through these kind of doc-in-a-box setups. And so I know that we're capable of providing this service at an incredible value to people, and giving them and making this more accessible medicine kind of everywhere. And so I'm a big fan of what we're doing in regards to how we're doing it. So a big thing that we can do is offer this way, where you come into the office the first time, you kind of meet us and talk to us about kind of your particular situation. And then with that, we determine if you are a good candidate for at-home treatment. I think those kind of doc in a box shops, and it's interesting, like you look at mindbloom, you look at some of the other ones, they're smart, they're venture capitalist backed, and so they're going to cover their bases legally. And with that, they're often not going to provide the best care, in my opinion, because they're doing, fast intakes, fast turnarounds. And then another thing to be considerate of and to be aware of is that they don't have any affiliation with their medical providers. They're basically like a ketamine front that is hiring these doctors and saying, this is how you prescribe. And I don't think that's like great medicine for sure. That's what a lot of insurances are doing, though. It's like you can be a medical practitioner and you have to prescribe like this, or otherwise you're going to have to jump through a myriad of logistical hoops to be able to prescribe like you want to. And that's frustrating. There's a lot of kind of gatekeeping when it comes to being able to provide treatment that people really want to be able to provide, both quality wise and efficaciousness. And so I think it's important to recognize that as we move forward, there's going to be more and more players in the game. There's going to be more people providing services like what we're doing. And we're going to always be trying to stay ahead of the curve in regards to what's the evidence support, and we're doing research ourselves, and what are the outcomes we're looking at, and how do we provide the most access, safest, and really like patient centered. I always say like what's good for you is good for the universe, and I 100% believe that. So this new treatment option, it isn't for everyone, and so we do have to do a vetting in person to talk to you, and we need to know your medication history. We need to be aware of where you're at, and just like always, when I'm prescribing this treatment, we need to use this on purpose. So we need to make sure that when we're talking to people about this treatment modality, that we make it not only accessible, uh, also very ethically accessible. And so with that, any sort of diversion, I'm not going to be a big fan of. I think that, as much as possible in Western medicine, we really wanted to keep this treatment as sacred and that we're doing it on purpose. So with that, I'm really not a fan of daily dosing. There is some evidence for daily dosing if you're looking at the anti-inflammatory component or the antidepressive component, with some other kind of things to mitigate the kind of psychological effects of ketamine. Um, and that's something that we're working on through Epic Biosciences. Super excited to be able to take some of the wraps off of that relatively soon. That being said, with regular racemic ketamine and the way that we're approaching treatment right now, I'm really not a fan of daily dosing. I think maximum 2 doses per week. And then it really should be less is more. So I want you to live that life worth living. Again, everything kind of comes from trauma, and everything's a coping strategy or a sequela of trauma. So look at where things are coming from. I would argue that most episodes of depression, of anxiety, substance use disorder, panic disorder, some even bipolar disorders that are often born out of a necessity for an extreme reaction. And so those coping strategies at one point in a person's life can be very beneficial, very uh, helpful. And then oftentimes those coping strategies continue despite the situation changing, and thereby the person has a lot less positives from reacting like that, and they can actually alienate relationships. They can cause more damage rather than being helpful. And so, the IV ketamine, I'm always going to be the most passionate about that in office with a practitioner. We're going to be able to mitigate side effects better. We're going to be able to kind of work through things better. We're going to have more support. We're controlling the environment really well. And that's super important. There's a myriad of reasons that at home is not my favorite. That being said, there's a bunch of people doing it. And again, my passion is to really increase access. I need to see people, if they're going to be doing this program, at least quarterly, at least every 3 months in person, to continue to get this. So that's why this treatment modality is best suited for those people within like a 30-mile epicenter of our clinics, and currently in Flagstaff, Sedona, and Prescott Valley. So I really don't want to prescribe out of that radius, just because I don't think that logistically it's doing you the best service, and or our practitioners, and or kind of community at large. There's a lot of places doing it that have better systems and processes in place. And so with that, like I'll be honest, right? So they're venture capitalist based, right? They've got hundreds of millions of dollars, and they can take a wash on the cost of this, because they're trying to establish their brand. So I think our pricing is still incredibly competitive. Currently, it's $595, and that covers your whole psychiatric and medical intake. That covers our coaching, and that covers our preparation, access to our integration resources, including our integration workbook. and then going over that with a practitioner in office, as well as help with intention setting, flight instructions, how to set up your environment at home, and really setting the foundation so you can really get the most out of your treatments. And so, again, 30-mile epicenter, you can't be taking concurrent benzodiazepines or opioids daily. Um, that's just a no-go, a hard pass from our office. First off, we know that if you're taking benzodiazepines or opioids, the ketamine will potentiate the effects of those. Ketamine by itself does not decrease respiratory drive. Ketamine by itself actually supports cardiovascular function. Ketamine with opioids or benzodiazepines can increase the effectiveness of those medications and thereby more respiratory depression, more risk of aspiration, more risk of CNS depression to the point where people could aspirate and die. Also, another thing, younger males in particular, there's a risk of kind of a like asthmatic type thing. So I'd prefer the first treatment to be very much witnessed, either by like a close friend or through our clinic, which we can do your first dose of oral ketamine therapeutic dose in office, witnessed by a practitioner with support, with vital signs monitoring. And a little bit more extra for only $200. So I think that's a pretty good deal because you're getting practitioner kind of overseeing you for 2-3 hours even sometimes. And so that's an option that we have. Like we can't offer that indefinitely. I think that, the demand of this will go up pretty dramatically because there's a lot of people doing mindbloom or joyous or betterU and I don't think they're getting the care that they should be. Um, and I think there's something really important about having a local branch to work with. And so again, 30-mile epicenter of Flagstaff, Sedona, or Prescott Valley. And then you're going to come in for your first one. You need to come in at least quarterly, $595 to establish. That covers your first 8 sessions of medication delivered to your door. Again, if you want to do your first session in-house, you know, we do that preparation, foundation building in office, making sure that you're safe to be able to go at this. And then make sure you're a good candidate, all those things. And then we will send off that prescription right during that visit to your um, to the local compounding pharmacy. We have one we really like, and they'll send it uh, directly to your home. Why did I brain fart on that? I don't know. And so there's lots of ways to get there. Again, it's not great for business. We tell people no one needs ketamine, no one needs an ego dissolution agent. A million other ways to get to a healthier headspace. In general, ketamine is a catalyst, not a cure. No silver bullet, a million silver BBs, right? And so that's why in our integration workbook, we really harp on the importance of all the other things that you should be doing in order to get the most out of these treatments. Ketamine, particularly intravenous, within 2 or 3 minutes of starting a ketamine infusion, we see new dendrites forming on a functional MRI. I personally have not seen ketamine troches, the oral version, which is this program, like change lives. I've seen it dramatically improve people's perspectives and that sort of thing. I think the IV ketamine is really where the big shifts take place quickly. And people come off of daily medications and do that sort of thing with support. So we do a deprescribing program if people are interested in that. Like, again, I don't think anything is inherently good or evil. The dose makes the medicine, dose makes the poison. Daily medications are great for a lot of people. They keep people getting out of bed, they keep people going, showing up to their appointments, pursuing care that they need. That being said, I think daily medications often do a disservice in that they take away the magnifying glass from the problem. Most daily medications are treating symptoms of underlying problems, thereby doing a disservice by reducing the gravity of the situation that the client is in. So again, everything comes from trauma. I think unprocessed trauma is what leads to increased symptomology. You get this male and a female rat, and you're like, you guys really bother me. And you throw them in a closet and close the door and lock it. What do rats do, right? They procreate. And so, 10 years, 2 years, three, 5 decades down the road, there's a lot of rats in that closet. And then they're going to come out and they're going to come out very intensely. So, ketamine as a dissociative anesthetic does a really good job of helping you get out of your own way, lets the walls down, right? The walls for a lot of people look like depression, anxiety, substance use disorder, panic disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, some bipolar disorders, even some schizoaffective and or psychotic disorders. Again, I'm not saying that's your situation. I really, as a psychiatric provider, I'm probably not your psychiatric provider. I may be in the future, and I'd love to see you. And it's really about you, for you, and by you. And that's why I'm a big proponent of what I call the intrinsic response methodology. And I do have a book coming out relatively soon about what that is, kind of the details of that as a therapeutic modality. And long and the short of it is it helps you recognize how much capacity you've always had. You'll always be your own best healer, right? You cut your hand and I put a band-aid on it. Am I healing it? Of course not. You're still healing it. And so, the brains don't like living in anxious, distressed states either. That's born out of a necessity at one point to have that kind of vehemence of response. Where people get in trouble is the judgment of that emotionality. And so with that, I'm very excited for this program. I know there's a lot of speaking points that I speak to a lot, honestly. So if you listen to my podcast, Mental Wealth Moves, you probably heard all of that before. And so, yeah, very cost effective. I think mindbloom was like close to $1,300. betterU was like 800 for a similar. And then again, you get local support. I think that's so important. And so, we'll be right there with you, like as much as you want us or need us. You will have access to in-person integration groups, and those take place in person. Currently, Tuesday mornings in Prescott Valley, 9 to 10 a.m. Wednesday mornings in Sedona, that's where I'm headed right now, 9 to 10 a.m. And Thursday mornings in Flagstaff, 9 to 10 a.m. And then online, Fridays, 9 to 10 a.m. So again, all the ego dissolution agents are coming down the pipeline. Currently, psilocybin, legal in Oregon and Colorado, and therapeutically being utilized. Ketamine legal everywhere, and being used off-label in large part. Again, racemic ketamine. They isolated the SNLR enantiomers of the ketamine molecule to create Spravato or S-ketamine. And with that chemistry, basically, they were able to patent the S-ketamine molecule, and they packaged it up in a nasal delivery device, and they were able to patent it and charge between $5,000 and $9,000 a dose initially. Now it's down to $1,500 a dose, and people are getting 2 doses a week for 4 weeks, and it works a lot better than most medications. And they do have an FDA indication for treatment-resistant depression, tried and failed 2 past medications, as well as acute suicidality. So we know it works. We know racemic ketamine in large part works better than just the S-ketamine molecule. That being said, no company in the right mind is going to pay the hundreds of millions of dollars that it costs to get an FDA-approved indication. And so, without having some sort of recourse, without being able to, make money off of it. So, I mean, it's capitalistic. There is a lot of innovation that takes place when there's incentive. When there's no incentive to innovate, that's when things stagnate. And so, like, I'm not anti anything really. Dose makes the medicine, dose makes the poison, right? Too much water is bad. Too little water is bad. Too much yoga is bad. Too little yoga is bad. So just being aware of all that, and no such thing as good and bad emotion, right? Only bad emotional reactions. So I think that's important to kind of really reiterate as well. What else? Okay, so $595, and again, that's beating the socks off of most of our big box competitors, and that gets you in our office. It's a 90-minute appointment. where we go over kind of your history. We talk about kind of, where you're at and what you want to move forward with. And then we go over our integration workbook with you. And we'll send you home with a copy of that. And then we will, have a very clear description on how to use those oral troches that you get delivered to your house. And you may be transitioning to us from another provider, or you may be just curious about how this works. And this price point is an entry point for you. Again, I'm always going to really advocate for people, especially with some deep seated stuff, to go through that intravenous ketamine, what we call induction series, where you're doing 6 treatments over a period of 3 weeks in combination with some sort of integration therapy 1 to 2 days after one of those treatments, and then a single booster infusion 3 to 5 weeks after that 6th one. The reason we do that kind of timeline is that creates 80 plus days of really good neuroplasticity, that ability to quite literally change your mind. And so that's 80 days is the top end that human beings need to create new habits and to break old habits. And so that's why we do it like that. With the oral ketamine at home, you're getting sent to your door 8 doses of oral ketamine, enough to have a sort of experience. We'll give you eye shades. We're going to give you guidance on how to best do it. And then really, it's the environment is super important, right? Like setting, and sustainability. Those 3 S's are so important with all the ego dissolution agent work. And so set is the mindset that you're going in with. So that preparation is so important and so powerful. We really emphasize that. The setting is making sure you're in a therapeutic environment so you can really get the most out of these treatments. My beard is getting unwieldy. I need to trim this guy. And then the third S, and this one, like I'm the most like passionate about, is sustainability. Zach Leary, Timothy Leary, son brought that up at a psychedelic conference I was at. Again, all these ego dissolution agents are coming down the pipeline, and we're kind of on the brink of a next era in regards to psychiatry, as well as, I would argue, physical medicine. You think of that lion that gets caught by the gazelle, right? Kind of goes into that fight, flight, or freeze state. The lion starts talking around, I got my prey. Oh, gazelle realizes it's opening, and it pops up, and it runs, and it runs, and it runs. And then 3 to 5 miles down the road, it's got this physiological shudder, the cellular level release. And so I would argue a lot of people are existing in that kind of fight, flight, or freeze state chronically. And so if you aren't advocating and putting yourself in that position where you can do that, like that physiological shudder on the regular, you're going to be in a survival mode, not a thrive mode. And that's going to significantly inhibit your healing ability. Your body's like, oh man, this is dangerous. I need to work on survival right now. I will not be doing any sort of thriving right now, right? Like I worry about like my environment, like am I safe right now? Like be hyper vigilant. And so then your body's natural healing ability goes offline when you're in that kind of state. And then, it's about remembering how capable you've always been. And the intravenous ketamine is what I'm the most passionate about for these 5 reasons. One, it's the best bioavailability, right? Intravenous, right in vein. So like 99% bioavailability. 2, it's the safest. And so, we know that there's no risk of serotonin syndrome with IV ketamine. We know that we're in office. We're all advanced coronary life support certified, in that, we can handle when things go awry. And ketamine's very safe. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medications. We start people at 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. They'll give in pre-hospital like 2 to 5 milligrams per kilogram all at once intramuscularly. They say they'll be on their first mission to Mars. You can give intramuscular ketamine and do a leg amputation or do a C-section with no other medications. So very safe medication. And we're doing that with we're doing the 45-minute infusion. That's where we start everybody. And so really easy on, easy off, and it's just been really really rewarding work in so many facets. And it's the most efficacious. That's the third reason I prefer IV ketamine. So, all the other ego dissolution agents are coming down the pipeline, and ketamine's been around since the 1960s, been used widely. It's the best well-tolerated anesthetic in both children as well as large animals, which are also mammals. So, that argument is always funny to me. Like, this is a veterinary medicine. It's like, yep. We mostly use human being medicines on mammals. We use mammal medicines on mammals. They work. So that means that ketamine is incredibly efficacious. There's been ketamine clinics around for mood disorders since the late 1990s. First study that I saw for ketamine used was in a teaching hospital in the late 1980s in Russia that was talking about the efficacy as a curative for trauma for like World War I veterans. So pretty interesting. And like 70 to 95% effective, the IV ketamine. So the 95% is the for suicidality. And what else? So the efficaciousness, and it blows everything else out of the water. Like there was a paper that came out year before last, and it was talking about how IV ketamine infusions are not inferior to electroconvulsive therapy. And I'm trained in electroconvulsive therapy. Electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, is quite barbaric. We're elucidating a seizure through electric stimulation of the brain with paddles. It's better now that it's unilateral versus bilateral because, there's so much cognitive deficits that happen either way. But certainly with the any ECT, like I always tell my clients, intelligence and empathy is kind of a deadly combination in that you hold on to a lot, and that's exhausting. And so we're all uh, evolving too fast. Like all this stuff happened too quickly, and our brains haven't caught up, and they're in the process of trying. Like we're very adaptable human beings. That being said, our current evolutionary state, we're able to hold the empathic load of up to 120 people, and so that's more than we're exposed to. And so, just most people's schools have more than 120 people. Schools, that's a whole other discussion. But, the fourth reason why I think IV ketamine should be really explored before anything else. And so we'll talk to you. Like you come in like, I want a 595 deal. It's like, fine. But I'm going to tell you this stuff, and I want you to examine it. The best investment you can always make is yourself, right? People finance their big fancy cars. People finance their big fancy houses, and they struggle mentally. Like, okay, like maybe make that like small investment in yourself, and drive a car that's a few years older. That'd be my guidance, right? Like, and so like think about that as you're growing thing. This spaceship is listed on Turo, by the way, if you want to be able to try out the spaceship. Love this thing. Kids love it too. It's like driving the future. But and it was driving me a minute ago. That was pretty cool. And so fourth reason, and why I like IV ketamine more than any of the other kind of options, is that it's the only version that's legal. And so, all of the other ones are becoming legal. I think MDMA, ecstasy, best well-tolerated ego dissolution agent, large swath of the population, and not safe for everyone because there is still some serotonin modulation. There's also like a stimulating component to it. So there's other things that should be checked health-wise first before you dive into any of these, obviously. And then I'm not advocating for anything besides IV ketamine, potentially, and not necessarily either. Just be clear about that. Ooh, hot air balloon. Squirrel. The other reason that okay, so MDMA and then ketamine, I think, is the second best well tolerated by a large swath of the population. MDMA doesn't have any like real perceptual distortions for a lot of people. It's more of an empathogenic than a psychedelic. Intravenous ketamine, again, second best well tolerated, I think, or ketamine in general. And then kind of a traditional psychedelics, cone of intensity, not as well tolerated by a large swath of the population, especially at macrodosing because of the extent of perceptual distortion. So how much things kind of shift in your brain and how you perceive things. is like kind of again cone of intensity. At the bottom, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, obviously dose dependent to this kind of intensity cone. And then LSD acid, and then mescaline peyote, then ayahuasca DMT, and then at the peak of that pyramid, 5-MeO DMT. I think ibogaine. Um, some of those other ones are just they're different. So ibogaine's like a 22-hour ride through your worst trauma. Can be very unsafe for people, so you need a very good medical vetting before you go through an ibogaine clinic, and not legal in the United States. There's churches and like weird circumventions that people are using. I just want you to know that some people are doing it very well and some people are doing it very poorly. Same thing with anything else. They call it practicing medicine, but just really do your vetting before you decide to go somewhere, and know that in general, they all kind of work the same, and that they're letting your walls down safely, ideally. And so, again, the fourth version, that legal, and the fifth version, especially for IV ketamine, and I think this one is really worth reiterating as we're talking about this, it's the only version you can pause. And so that really keeps you in the driver's seat. So if you're going somewhere too much and you aren't quite ready to go there, you let me know, and you're aware enough to let us know. Then I pause the infusion, 2 to 5 minutes, you're back. And that's pretty powerful. That's good to know, because there's a lot, and there might be a lot kind of suppressed or repressed. And that's kind of one of the worst reactions, is that repressed trauma comes up. And I usually think that's a really good thing, because again, the three tenets of the treatment in general: one, name it to tame it. So give it weight, right? Understand where it's coming from. Two, feel it to heal it. So give yourself that time and that grace to really like, oh man, that was rough, or whatever it is. A lot of times people didn't have the space to be able to do that. And then the third one, and this one's really like kind of the most important, and that's why I talk about integration as the rubber hits the road, is that we want to make that shift, help you make that shift of this happened to me to this happened for me. And ketamine as a dissociative anesthetic seems to really do that quite well and quite quickly, help people get there. So those are the reasons I would prefer IV ketamine over anything else. And that being said, I understand that a lot of people are interested in this and they cannot afford it or access it for a multitude of reasons. And so we want to increase access. And that's what we're talking about today. So $595, you get an in-person, and that's important to me. Like I want to see you in person consultation where we talk about, your particular situation, and why this is a good option for you or not. And then, if we decide that it is, then we go through the whole kind of 90-minute kind of in-depth medical, physical, psychiatric examination. And then we go through the integration workbook, give you directions on how to do the trochees, how to do that, at home, set in that environment for yourself. And then we send off that prescription. You get the first 8 doses sent to your house, and then you have access to our integration group 4 times during that month. And so that's a ability to come in and talk to other people who are doing ketamine treatments, and it's only open to people who've done ketamine treatments with us in some capacity. And then, and I can't do this indefinitely. Like there'll have to be a kind of shift as this, demand ramps up, which I'm certain it will, because this is so different and so much better than a lot of different modalities. Again, I'm the co-founder of Epic Biosciences. There's some cool stuff coming out there, and I really want to increase access. I'm passionate about that, safely and ethically. If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And so really being smart about how we do it this time when it comes to the ego dissolution agents. So that's, I was trying to go live for this, but Facebook Live was like, nope, not today. So I just recorded this and I will be posting it soon. And I hope that's helpful. Let you know a little bit more about our $595 at-home ketamine treatment package. And you will have to follow up in a month. And any refills, there's a medication kind of administration appointment that you'll have to do. And that's $150. And then you're responsible for the medication kind of going forward from there. Again, less is more. Like, I don't want you to take it more than you need it, up to twice weekly, no more than that. I don't think that a therapeutic journey more than twice weekly is really in your best interest. The integration very much so. And so we have psychedelic integration coaches on staff, and we have a licensed clinical social worker and therapists on staff, and psychiatric providers. And so we got a lot of resources. And again, I only want this to really be available to people that can commit to coming in person. That's like, yeah, you go ahead, go to a doc in the box, go to the telemedicine and go see someone, and never get out of your house. And you probably won't get as much out of it, I'll be honest with you. So like, I want these to be life-changing for you. And I know that there's a potential to do that. And so between going to Revitalize Ketamine Clinic, talking to the practitioner, being very safe and intentional with how we do these treatments, and then check out Rocked Wellness Bar. Like, go check out those kind of modalities that are designed to help you live your best life as a precursor to an adjunct to, and a continuation of. Again, I want you to see us less, not more, over time. So much of that Western medical model, that potentiated illness model, like pill for every problem, the pharmaceutical industry, insurance industry, and most providers and agencies are incentivized to keep them on daily medications. And that stinks. I don't like that. So let's be real clear about that. And thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this and it was informative for you. And reach out if you have any questions. Call the office if you want to book a session and talk about how these treatments might work for you. Thanks so much, and make it a great day. Remember, what's good for you is good for the universe.
Thanks for tuning in to another Mental Wealth Moves podcast. I'm your host, Casey Dubrovic, owner and founder of Revitalize Ketamine Clinic's Rocked Wellness Bar, as well as co-founder of Epic Biosciences. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and make it a great day.